Let's log in the API builder, enter your username at local space directory with a space between local and directory. If you're connected to an Active Directory, then you entered a name in. It may not be the exact same as your domain name. Mine is not. So that would be first initial at lwl.corp for me, and then password. So as I enter in, the system comes up and displays the defaults for the first inspector. And you notice that you can type into the top left box, in this case Wi-Fi, and the summary inspector shows it's the only inspector to contain Wi-Fi information. And if I type in CPU, you'll see there's a number of inspectors that contain columns or basis fields possibly that are CPU related. So these couple inspectors here that I'm showing you contain a column with CPU in the name. Go back to Wi-Fi and you see this first inspector has lookup basis columns named Wi-Fi, and it has metric columns that have Wi-Fi in the name. If I go to this right-hand side box, which shows lookup or group by columns, I can filter down to Wi-Fi's and see some Wi-Fi group by columns. And if I go to the columns tab, which really contains metrics columns and other extended column groups, I can type in Wi-Fi and see a column grouping for Wi-Fi, which contains Wi-Fi metrics. And I can also look at the default columns and search those, and none of those contain Wi-Fi. But if I go to the all columns grouping and type in Wi-Fi, I will see some metrics that contain W and I in them, and then Wi-Fi, of course, will constrain it down further. And so let's go back to the column grouping. There's a lot of metrics here in the all columns that contains, and there's a lot of different groupings. Let's go back to the column grouping that contains Wi-Fi metrics. And there's a couple of them. We'll go to the simple Wi-Fi overview, and I can start double-clicking these or dragging them over or multi-selecting, sending them over, send them all over. And now these are the metrics that are going to be previewed on the bottom, and I'm going to get these in the JSON box on the right-hand side. And if I go back to the main tab, I can now also select the first group by columns, which I never did select, to be more than just the date. Group by the Wi-Fi SSID, group by the machine name, and I can move those to the top so you can see all those that are going to be displayed on the bottom. And those are also a little bit different of a color, you can see on the bottom there. So those are the lookup by columns. And if you click the columns tab, you've got metric columns. Let's go over to the filters tab, and we're going to try to get rid of these nones here on the second column by picking the column name, Wi-Fi SSID, and then not like, and then we'll type in none exactly as it is. If you don't know how it should be, then you might want to put an asterisk on both sides. And now we'll see it remove those from our field of view and update the JSON box on the right. So this API would now return maybe a more cleaner, more specific selection of data. All right, we can go ahead and kind of get a broader look at that and sort by a couple columns if we wanted to and see who shows up there and rationalize if this is the exact API that we're looking for. And I can go to the sorting column tab and have it sort the data on the data pull, not the data in the table beneath. That's kind of done when I click it, but the data on the pull from the server, I can have it sort that by a certain column and then in a certain ascending or descending manner. And so now we'll go ahead and select percents and also some units so that it pretties up the data a bit. Depending upon your use case, you may not want to do that. And then you can pick additional date ranges. A date range like yesterday or date range that's named there will work dynamically, and then you can pick a date range specifically if you had a specific date in mind. And then you can choose the output to come out as a CSV if you'd like in this API. If somebody's going to click this API or run it as a scheduled task or not do something programmatic with it with an application development, but maybe do something with just a simple data exchange, then you might want it to come out as CSV. And of course, I can save this query. You can type a tag in or multiple tags. And when you save this, you have the ability to access it from the saved queries, or you can add it to a favorite on the left-hand side. So it's quick access, a quick favorite, so you can start from that point and drill down. I can click Generate CSV on this screen, and I can go ahead and get an Excel file or text file that you can open with Excel. The JSON's been updated here. On the left-hand side, I can select one of the prior queries that I have, and you'll see that that one gets loaded up. And then you can go ahead and view that data on the bottom of the screen. view the basis by moving them to the top, seeing a good representation of what you have selected. Again, what you can see on the bottom. You can look in the preview in the JSON area on the right-hand side. Let's open that CSV file. This is what came out of the export. And you can use a different style of first column header if you'd like. You can combine the friendly name with it or just switch it to the friendly name. And that's done if you wanted to go back to that one and re-export it out with a friendly name at the top. Go to the Output tab and then select the style. Is going to be maybe just the pretty version. The name's prettified there, looking a little bit more human readable. Okay, so those are subject to change, so you'd want to use the non-pretty or the raw version if you were programmatically grabbing that column of data. And then there's ability to sort by the inspectors that you saved a query from or look them up by your tags, of course. And then there's a history tab. So as you're moving through, sometimes you get to a view that you really like, but then you continue to move down a path, and maybe you want to go back to something that you had just a prior click or two, and you're not exactly sure how to get there in the workflow. So you can go to your history and look and see, confirm with your JSON data that it's been updated. And then you can also copy that API URL or launch it and test it and see how that works launching it through the browser. Now you see it shows up in JSON format instead of downloading it as a CSV. It depends on your output options. Each one of those rows is a block of data here, and at the bottom you've got your raw column name and then your pretty or friendly column name so that you can use that in your application or in your inject that into your development. And so you also have the ability to go under the configuration gear and adjust some theming to personalize the interface. And you can also enable or disable a few automatic options so that you can actually have a drill down, which is inspector-like, so that you can select data in the table and then select a specific hour and then maybe even a specific record and then export that out if you'd like. And so that's called auto resolution, and you need to enable that into the configuration area, and it allows you to then drill up and down and select the breadcrumbs here and move up and down the data set, kind of like an inspector. So that does need to be enabled in the settings before it's active.